What's up, guys? Today we have a clip of Nick Fuentes on the Jack Neel Podcast talking about segregation.
This brings me to another point. Nick, you're a self-proclaimed racist or racialist. Do you think America should bring back segregation?
No, but what I would say is that people should have the right to live among their own people. And I think that sort of a loaded question, which is a fair question, but what we are undergoing right now is the greatest sociological experiment in world history, which is to say that we all know that in 1965, America was a 90% white country, 90% white, 10% black, and maybe a little bit in the middle there was Hispanic, Asian. People really don't understand that. It was 90% white and mostly Christian, and people can feel however they want about it. Now we're a 60% white country, and in 10, 15 years, we're going to be a 50% white country. Now think about how much changes with that. These are people that came here largely through immigration. They speak different languages. They have different alphabets. They don't even use the same letters. They come from different continents. They have different religions, different customs, holidays, heroes. They have a different sense of humor. They have a different look. Everything about them is different. And we're basically being told that we have to accept this transformation. Your neighborhood that was one way, that was a Christian white neighborhood, is now going to be a 80% Indian neighborhood, or now it's going to be 80% Somali, or now it's going to be 80% Mexican, and now all the signs are going to be in Arabic, and now the mayoral candidate is going to be fighting with clan warfare with this other Somali people, and now you're going to be celebrating Diwali in your subdivision instead of Christmas, and people are starting to say, wait a second, this doesn't feel like America. America's apple pie and baseball and Merry Christmas and Marshall Fields. You know, we're in Chicago after all. People are saying, I don't like that this is happening in my neighborhood. I want to go somewhere where it feels like America. But it turns out you can't do that. Because if you want to set up shop in a neighborhood and say, this is where it's going to be white people and we're going to have our white culture and our Christian culture, that's called segregation. That's called white supremacy. That's called white nationalism. But I would say, how is it fair that you have entire neighborhoods called Little Haiti, Little Cuba, Little this, that, the other, and they set up an ethnic enclave and they make it very comfortable for themselves. They have their parades, but if white people want to go in our own country where our ancestors were at, not mine, but some people's ancestors were here at Jamestown, or they were here at, the Virginia colony. If they want to go and set up a neighborhood, they say, oh, that's racist. I think people should be able to choose to live among people they're with. I'm not a believer that, people need to drink out of a separate water fountain because they're racially inferior, but I believe that we should be able, as white people, to express our culture in our neighborhood the way that every other group of people seems to be able to now that we have a multiracial country.
So is there a policy that would ensure that? Or what would that look like logistically?
I think that first of all, you have to get rid of the Civil Rights Act, because the Civil Rights Act would say that you cannot voluntarily self-segregate in that way. It would make it illegal. So you have to overturn elements of that. And then the other thing is, there's a lot of backdoor policies that literally aim to break up white neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like the Obama administration had a policy at HHS where they said that if a neighborhood was not diverse enough, they would bring in Section 8 housing. They would say, if your neighborhood is more than 50% white, we're going to put Section 8 in your neighborhood. And what do you think Section 8 is going to attract? I mean, it's like a deliberate war to make sure that there are no white neighborhoods. And, it would be one thing if they were doing that to everybody, because at least you could argue that that's fair, but they're not. In Chicago, Little Village is all Hispanics, Pilsen's all Hispanics, Garfield Park is all blacks. But you go out to the suburbs where it's white people and it's nice, they want to bring in Section 8 and say, no, you can't all live together as white people. Well, so our options are what? We're going to live in the South Side, or we're going to live in Little Mexico. It's just, that's not right. So anyway, I think they should just play by the same rules and reverse some of those policies.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a genius to understand we're being replaced. You can look at Europe. Every single country in Europe is being flooded by Muslims and blacks. And this is not to be racist. This is reality. You don't have to be white to believe that. Malcolm X was black and he pushed segregation. He believed blacks should be able to have their own country in America, but he also pushed Afro Americans to go back to Africa. And this is not racist. It's okay if in Africa there's 99.9% of black people. It's okay if in China, Japan, all over Asia is 99% Asians. But somehow in Europe and America, it's not. Diversity, immigration, inclusion, these are all cop-outs to destroy white countries. Because there is no need for immigration. Okay? Well, white people have no kids, so what? White people have no kids because if we have a kid, he goes to school and he has transgender books. We don't have kids because he goes to school and he's a minority in a class full of Muslims and blacks. And again, I'm not racist, this is just reality. They removed the Bible from every school. In Europe and USA, same. But at the same time, the Quran is being pushed in our schools. Not in their countries, in our countries. They flee from their countries to come here, and then we have to accept their culture. Bro, you come in here. We're not going there. And guess what? If we lose these countries, we have no home. Okay? They can go back to India. They can go back to Africa. They can go back to Pakistan, Afghanistan. But us, no. We have no home. This is our homeland. And somebody said, as long as whites are the only people not allowed to live among themselves, we will remain a dying nation. And that's true. Who's pushing diversity in India? Who's pushing diversity in Africa? Who's pushing diversity in Asian countries? Nobody. Only in white countries. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree or disagree, what should we do about it? Leave a like if you want to. Christ is King, and God bless.